After you get the sale, right? Most people, right? I'm saying normal salespeople. What they do, they get the sale. Thank you. Close the sale. Boom, done. Whatever. Got money. Cha-ching. Now I'm about to tell you something right now. I'm about to drop the heat. I'm about to tell you something right now that's going to take your game to the next level. Now, what is that? What is that thing that's going to take your game to the next level? After you get the sale, after you close on the deal, you have to turn that customer into a raving fan. Now, why would you do that? That's because it's all about marketing, baby. Welcome to Essential Tools Entrepreneur. This podcast is about inspiring, motivating entrepreneurs and teaching skills to pay the bills. In this podcast, you will learn everything it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. Things like sales, marketing, employee management, more marketing, and more marketing. And I'm your host, Eric Williams. Hey, how y'all doing? This is Eric. Welcome back to another episode of Essential Tools Entrepreneur. This is episode number 5. And today I'm going to go over a process of sales because sales is a process. So I'm going to give one process out of many that I have. And pretty much I'm going to walk you through about 10 steps. All right. A pre-appointment, what to do when you get on that appointment, different questions to ask, a presentation, and then just close the sale. So pretty much that's some things I'm going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right. So pretty much going on an appointment, you want to figure out what questions to ask. Asking questions are very important. So we're starting off with the pre-appointment, because the appointment starts before you ever go on the actual appointment. It already starts. So you have to start first with the mindset. Are you in the mindset of helping? I know that's something that we talked about, so you want to make sure that you go back and check out that podcast. I believe that was the first one or the second one. So the next question is the objections. The next step is the objections, in the pre-appointment. You want to think of what objections, what concerns or questions might my customer have for me. That they might raise a question in their mind, and you want to go ahead and you want to list those objections out because those objections will come up, and it's better for us to actually raise those objections ourselves because when we raise those objections ourselves, we can actually control the conversation. That's another podcast. That's something I'm not going to get into. So the next one is pretty much you want to plan your questions. All right. Before you go on an appointment to deal with sales, you want to plan your questions. You don't want to plan what to say, but you want to plan your questions. All right. So that's pretty much the pre-appointment. Again, with this podcast, I'm focusing on what questions to ask. So in the pre-appointment, you want to make sure that your mindset is in check. You have the objections in mind that might come up. All right. And you actually have questions that you're actually going to ask the customer. And there's different types of questions, which we'll get into pretty soon. So first, showing up on the appointment, what's the first most important thing that you want to do showing up on the appointment? Is you want to pretty much be human. Now, this is very important because this can actually end up hindering you from making the actual deal, the actual sale, is because the person don't trust you or they don't like you. That's a big thing, is to make sure that the person you're dealing with, make sure they like you and make sure they trust you. Because without foundating that first, it won't be able to go on. The transaction won't go on. You're pretty much just wasting your time because people do deals, right, with whom they know, like, and trust. That's something that's common in the field of sales. So in order to achieve that, it's a technique that a salesman use, and it's mirroring. You want to mirror your client, right? So what does that mean? How their speech, you want to mimic the speech and their behavior. So if you come and you talking to a customer, who's a little soft spoken and low key, you want to come in soft spoken and a little low key. You don't want to come in over the top. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's not. It's not a good human to human relationship. Now some things might be going on in that customer's brain that they necessarily will not tell you until you spent an hour, 40 minutes with them, going through the process. So you pretty much want to mirror the customer, their behavior and their speech. You want to mimic the customer, right? So if they're, talking fast over the top, hyper, you want to be talking fast over the top and hyper. So you really want to be similar, because it's known that people like people who's like them. If you're like me, then you pretty much you have a greater chance of pretty much having that human to human connection. All right, so next, what you want to do in the process of sales is you want to pretty much come into the question phase, is you want to build rapport. Okay, so this is pretty much the first questions you want to do when you start asking your questions. You start talking to the customers. You want to start building rapport, those type of questions. Now, typically how I personally have done it, and it works out for me very well in the past, it's a very smooth transaction. I kind of open up about myself, right? Like, for example, I went on one real estate deal. It was a wholesale real estate deal, and it was I can't remember her name. I think her name was by the name of Miss Nancy, and she was pretty much up in age, and she had a son, David. Okay, had a son, David. He was pretty much middle age. So I was pretty much talking to them, and what I typically do at this point. I pretty much open up about myself. Hey, how are you doing? My name is Eric. First off, well, let me start and tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to where I am today. Blah, 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 blah. So I open up about myself first, right? That getting that human to human interaction, letting them know that it's okay. I'm a regular guy like you, and a regular human like you. And then I ask them certain types of rapport building questions. These questions are always open-ended, which means pretty much the answer that they will give will not be a yes or no answer. It encourages them to pretty much start talking, tell the story. And what makes it so effective is that when I start talking like that, I start getting into story mode. And then I ask them a question and it starts to get them into story mode. Now, you may not get the whole enchilada right here. Okay. They may, tell a little bit of story, but you're warming them up. Again, you're warming them up. Sales is a process. Never forget that it's a process. You go from this, you got to go from this start. You have to make sure that start is done correctly. And then you move on to the next step. And then you move on to the next step. And you don't leave a step until that step is complete and it's correct. So in this step, the first step is the pre-appointment. The second step is we kind of adapt to the environment, we kind of adapt to the environment, we mirror them, and now we're building rapport with questions, right? We ask them, so, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? I don't want to sound weird or anything, but I always like to know a little bit about my clients that I talk to, so things to, go over kind of well. I always like to give them a reason too, you can, pretty much tell people different things. As long as you give a reason that makes sense, people are pretty cool. So that's the question. The first set of questions I start with is just really getting that human connection. It's being cool. All right. So now the next set of questions I start going into are intelligent questions. Now, these are intelligent questions because when you're dealing with your client, you pretty much want to find out certain things about them certain things about their past, right? Depending on the product or service that you're offering to help them with, you want to find out, well, have you ever dealt with anything like this in the past? Now, why would you want to do that? Because they may have dealt with something like your product or service in the past, and it did not work out too well. Don't you know that stigma, that thing is in the back of their mind and is going to come up when it's time to close a sale? So right here, what you have to do is you have to actually address that, right? You ask those questions, all right? Those intelligent questions, because you want to figure out the needs, right? You want to figure out, what are the concerns, what makes your customer, angry, upset. What's some fears that they have? What keeps them up at night? You just really want to develop those questions. And with each different situation, you're going to come with different questions. Depending on the personality, you're going to ask the questions in a certain type of way. So I can't really just give a flat out example for questions that's across the board, but there is certain type of questions, like right off the top of my head, I can think of a very powerful question when you start kind of getting close to closing, which I'll get there at closing. Let me write that down so I don't actually forget. I'm going to stay focused here. So pretty much I'm asking intelligent questions, trying to figure out the concerns of the customer, the fears of the customer, because once I start asking those questions and then I shut up, right? Because there's no need for you to ask questions if you don't know how to listen, which I definitely want to do another episode that's just all about listening. I was doing something today, talking to somebody, and I actually tried it. I pretty much shut up and I let them talk, and pretty much I picked out something that they said, and I waited till they got done talking, and I brought back up and I commented on what they said, and then the elevation of the conversation was just amazing. So it's actually very effective. A skill is to actually listen. So you want to ask these questions, and you just want to be quiet. You don't want to talk. All right. When you're in sales, you want to starting off, you want to do some questions, and then you just want to let them talk. All right. And everything should flow naturally. Again, it is human to human conversation. So you want to ask those questions. Again, one question: have you ever had a product or service like this before? All right. If you want to find out, like, say, for example, many of you might have a product or service that's similar to other product or service. You can pretty much ask them, or what I meant by that is maybe they have a product or service already that's similar to yours. And quite simple, why should they buy yours when they got something similar? A good way to approach that is you can ask them, so, hey, I know you said that you have a, similar product or service, right? Whatever that service or product is name. I know you said you have that. Well, let me ask you a question. On a scale of 1 to 10, right? 10 knowing that nothing, is perfect, but we know nothing is really perfect, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer. On a scale of 1 to 10, knowing that 10, is perfect, but nothing is really perfect, what would you rate that client on? What would you rate it on? And they're going to give you an answer. They're going to say, well, they're 7. Oh, really? 7? Wow. Okay. Well, could you explain why 7? So you see what I'm doing? I'm asking simple questions, and I'm taking notes, right? Sometimes I'll tell customers, hey, I'm gonna take notes while I'm talking to you, because I really want to perfect my professionalism and I want to get better, right? That's a reasonable response. Is a reasonable pretty much why am I doing what I'm doing? So, they say 7. Okay, Mrs. or Mr. Customer, why 7? Could you tell me about 7? Well, yeah, because I don't like when they do this. Oh, really? Well, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, did you know that my product, it does that 10 times better? So, that's just one example. Again, just you can kind of brainstorm these questions. And you just really want to think about, how can I help them? Again, I cannot stress that enough. If you're in that mindset of how can I help them, everything is just going to come together. It's going to flow. You're going to be able to ask the right questions. Okay. So those are two types of questions. You got building rapport questions. You know, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I see that you have pictures of tennis. You know, I don't really like tennis, but I have a family member that plays tennis, right? You can find some type of way, right? It's like a curveball. You can find some type of way of hitting that ball, right? Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I see, you know, a lot of, you know, salsa dancing pictures, you know. Well, I always thought of getting into salsa dancing. I saw it one time and it interested me. Could you tell me more about that, right? Bim, right there. That customer will not shut up. They're going to talk. The whole time you're listening, right? And what you're doing, you're building rapport. You're building human to human connection, right? You're cool, they're cool. Then you move on to intelligent questions. Intelligent questions is aimed at finding out, you know, something, whether it's fear, desire, concern, or the last example I gave, maybe they have another product or service that's like yours and you just want to get your foot in the door. Right? On a scale of 1 to 10, you know, why don't you go ahead and rate your current, you know, blah, blah, blah. All right. I'm going to actually do another podcast. It should actually be right after this, but this is going to be about marketing, because sales and marketing, that's two totally different things, right? Marketing is pretty much what you do to get the customer. Okay. Sales is pretty much human to human conversation. Is all about communication. So pretty much, let's move on. So far, right, you're in a situation, an example, you got your pre-appointment. All right, you get there, you want to mirror the customer, you want to step into the situation and adapt. You want to build rapport questions, right? You know, you can start off like how I start off is by opening up myself. Let me open up my book and tell you a little bit about me. You know, ask you a open-ended question that promotes storytelling. And then you want to do intelligent questions, okay? And then you want to go ahead and give a presentation, all right? It's a presentation. Whether you're taking them to an ebook or a book or slideshow, or you just actually want to pretty much talk about the different things and answers that they gave to you. All right, then you want to pretty much move on. You want to move on and you can actually close the sale. All right. Closing the sale is very simple. It is something that one of the entrepreneurs that I learned from by the name of Grant Cardone, right? I'm pretty sure you heard of him, but Grant Cardone, you know, guys, is wonderful at able to, you know, to close, right? And what I take away from him is the ability to say to a customer, have you heard enough to make your decision? That's so effective. So many salesmen do not make they don't actually close. You know, they don't actually ask for the sale. And it's that simple. Just ask for the sale. Ask for the business. Now, when you ask for the business, don't be surprised if you get objections. Okay, so here's the thing about objections. You want to go ahead and you want to raise the objection in your presentation, which would be the step before this. Before you ask for the sale, right? You're talking to the customer. And I can go deeper within these different topics. Like, for example, what do you actually do when you're giving a presentation? You know, how do you deal with the value? You know, you got to go through your value statement. I can give a kind of a rough draft really quick, but that's another podcast in its own, right? When I'm given a presentation, all right, before, you know, I really shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Before I even attempt to talk to that customer, I have to present some type of authority. Okay, so what does that mean? Take, for example, a police officer. Police officer has a uniform on, right? So before you even talk to that police officer, he's in a position of authority. You're willing to listen. a lawyer. When you come into a lawyer's office or any type of office setting, whether it be your teacher, what do you see? You see plaques. You see degrees on the wall. It's a degree. It's something that they earned. Those are authority. Before you even talk, you walk into the office. What do you see? You see authority. That's actually a tactic. All right. Authority. That puts you in a position. What? Oh, man, I need to learn from this person. Right. So you have to present authority. Right. You have to go through an education series. You have to educate the customer, which gives the effect of what, you're the subject matter. You're the professional. You know more than me, so I need to learn. Right. You pretty much you have to present authority. You have to educate the customer. It's a whole bunch of those. It's going to make this thing too long, so I'm not going to go into that. But it's actually different, a different way you want to go through that presentation. But after the presentation, so let me go back to the beginning. We got the pre-appointment, right? We got the showing up. We mirroring the speech. We got the different questions, building rapport, intelligent questions. Then we give the presentation. Then we ask for the sale, and you deal with those objections, right? It's different ways of dealing with objections. You want to bring those objections up. All right. And you want to deal with those objections. But objections are nothing more than concerns. You want to address those concerns and pretty much educate the client on, your value proposition, which I'm going to get into later. Okay. All right. So from that point, you pretty much want to ask for the sale again. Okay, Mrs. and Mr. Customer, I explained to you X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about that? Okay, yeah, I always had that. I feel good about it. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's close this thing out. Have you heard enough at this point where you're ready to let me help you? Boom, simple as that. You see, that was a closing question. All right, so at this point, you're pretty much towards the end of the actual process. Whenever you're dealing with sales, you always want to have a process. Whenever you're dealing with anything in your business, it should be a process. It should be a repeatable process. All right. Different things are going to change, but nevertheless, the process stays the same that you can duplicate easily. So that's pretty much a different a process you can go through. Again, I have different processes that I can go through. I can just choose. But nevertheless, after you get the sale, right? Most people, right? I'm saying normal sales people, what they do, they get the sale. Thank you. Close the sale. Boom. Done. Whatever. Got money. Cha-ching. Now, I'm about to tell you something right now. I'm about to drop the heat. I'm about to tell you something right now that's going to take your game to the next level. Now, what is that? What is that thing that's going to take your game to the next level? After you get the sale, after you close on the deal, you have to turn that customer into a raving fan. Now, why would you do that? That's because it's all about marketing, baby. All right, so let me explain something to you. I'm an IT guy. I'm an information technology guy. All right. In the world of hacking, it's something that's called a botnet attack, where I attack your computer and many other computers like yours, and I turn your computer into a zombie. That's literally the technical term we use. It's called a zombie. I turn your computer into a bot. And I use your computer, your IP address to attack, right? I use your computer and probably about 50 other computers to attack one other computer within a company or organization or whatever. That's a botnet attack. So you have to take that customer and turn that customer into a raving fan. You want to turn that customer into a raving fan. Now, how do you do that, and what does that mean? Okay, so pretty much after you're done with you got to sell the customer, what you want to do is you want to pull out your secret sauce. You want to pull out the hot sauce, right? You want to over deliver, right? Whether it's giving away something for free, or you say, you know what, Mrs. and Mr. Customer, just for you, I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you that. Now, the effect that have on that customer is amazing. Like, wow, really? Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And you know what that customer's going to do naturally? You know what that customer's going to do? Oh my gosh, let me call all of my friends. and tell them how great you are. That's called third-party validation. That's the most powerful advertisement is the word of mouth. So when you get that sale, you want to treat that customer like gold because it will return tenfold. They will go to all their family members and talk about how well you treated them, right? That's it. That's how you get more. You will get more. You turn that customer into 10 customers. Now that customer is out marketing for you. You want to deliver over the top, treat them like gold. And then after the sale, after you leave the sale, okay, you spend a little bit of time with them. You just don't get up and leave. You spend a little bit of time with them, probably go back and, build some more rapport. What you want to do is you want to contact that customer and make sure that they feel that they are taken care of. How do you feel about the process, Mrs. or Mrs. Customer? You want to make sure that it's outstanding, all right? So that's it. That's it. That's it for this podcast. It's a little bit longer than I thought. I usually don't have my podcast this long, but it was necessary. So pretty much a quick recap of the process I took you through today. It's many processes that I can choose from. This is just one that pretty much, I thought that makes sense. All right. It's got the pre-appointment. You got you show up in the appointment, you want to mirror. Then you got questions you want to ask. And questions, reason why I keep going back to questions, because they're so important. And when you think of questions, you want to think of, you're kind of peeling back layers with each question and you want to get to the core. All right. And how do you know when to stop asking questions is when you hit an emotional point. All right. As when you feel that the answer that they gave you was emotional. You know what? That's the truth. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and take that one. Other than that, you keep asking questions. You keep digging. So you got the pre-appointment, you got the, you mirror them. Then you got the questions you build, rapport questions, intelligent questions. And then you want to give a reason. You want to give a presentation. And then you want to get the sale. If there's any objections, deal with that, which you should have really eliminated the objections in the presentations. But if you get them, that's a whole nother podcast on how to deal with objections. It's a skillful way to deal with them. Then you want to pretty much, you want to ask for the sale again. And then you want to turn that customer into a raving fan. Right? Man, it's just so much I want to say in this podcast. I just got to make myself shut up. But I'm going to say it real quick. I'm going to make this podcast long. All right. I'm going to go into right now. I'm going to go into why a lot of businesses don't do well when they open. You got a lot of businesses that are open for business and they go out of business. What's up with that? What in the world? What's up with that? Pretty much. All right. So pretty much starting off. Nobody cares about your product and your service. That's the truth. Nobody cares. But you talk to all these different, entrepreneurs. Oh my gosh, my business is so wonderful. I can do this and I can do that. Yeah, that's the value that you see in your business that you spent hours and hours setting up. But guess what? I don't care. Nobody cares. They only care after the experience. They only care after the experience. You know what? I'm going to make that another podcast. That's some hot pepper right there. I'm going to make that another pack. I'm going to make that another podcast. I'm going to drop it, right? So that's another podcast. I'll make it right after this. All right. That's it. Eric out. And there it is. I have been your host, Eric Williams. Thanks for checking out Essential Tools Podcast. And don't forget to go to my website at knowledgeandbusiness.com. The more you learn, the more you earn.